All right. Seems like everybody started. Everybody's here. Okay. Well,
Awesome.
hi, everybody. This is Carmine Dionisio with Service Leaders Network, and I'm here to introduce to you Jonathan Westergaard. We just said this, the technical training coordinator.
Yes.
Okay, that's very good for Fisher Paykel. So I'm going to go ahead and let him start. He's going to be teaching you today the dish drawer, and I'm just going to go ahead and let him start. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll monitor that along the way. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Carmine. Appreciate that. Welcome. As he said, my name is Jonathan. I'm the technical trainer here at Fisher & Paykel Appliances. The Fisher & Paykel has been producing appliances since 1937, which is quite a bit longer than most people realize. The dish drawer itself is the product that we're going to cover today. The dish drawer has been in production for quite some time, but it originally started being imported to the US around 1998. It has sold very well, is very popular, especially within the community, the premium luxury community, houseboats, RVs, everything to do with integrated installations. So along the way, you may or may not be familiar with the dish drawer. We've certainly learned a lot as a manufacturer along the way, and our current product is the Phase 9. That is what we're going to cover today. But we have since introduced the Phase 10 product that is being launched currently and available for purchase from retailers nationwide shortly. So today what we're going to cover is a bit of the component access, diagnostics, and the common issues that you'll see in the field. After today's session, or during today's session, I'm going to work to address all of your commentary, questions, and concerns around the dish drawer. Obviously, being a unique product, service is a bit different than what we're used to with traditional drop-down door dishwashers. So that is getting into the dish drawer. And lastly, the one thing I will say is living up to one of our brand pillars is offering the beauty of choice. So with that being said, we make this current dish drawer in a variety of configurations, both single and double, as well as 2 different heights and a variety of finishes, including integrated if the customer decides to go full integrated into their kitchen. That way we can meet everybody's idea of kitchen perfection. So moving into it. Breaking down the model numbers, you'll see the variety of models we have here. They're all going to start with DD, dish drawer. It's pretty obvious. And then the width is 24 inches. We only have this in a 24-inch width, which is the standard size of a dishwasher. And then now is where we start to get a little more into the variety of products. So this will indicate either a single unit or a double. And then we have the overall design, whether it's classic, our designer model, which is more of that European aesthetic, a little bit more modern or contemporary. And then we do have a professional line as well. Moving into the other features or options that the product may have, a flat door panel, a water softener, if that is the choice. If it is a tall tub, it'll be designated there. And then we have our different finishes: integrated, stainless, black, white, or the black stainless model that we saw on the title screen. Again, this is version 9. That's what we're going to be covering and discussing today. And depending on the generation, you may or may not find an N at the end of the model number. That would indicate the new logo. That is the bold, upright text, different than what we've had in years past. So taking a look, model and serial number is always going to be located on the upper drawer on the left side of the chassis. So when you open the drawer and look at the left side of the chassis, you'll find the model serial sticker mounted vertically. Taking a closer look, we can see our product code, our model number, and our serial. As always with Fisher & Paykel products, make sure you order parts based off of the product code. And also the service version number at the end of that product code is very, very important. Whether that letter designation is an A, B, or C will make a difference in the components as well as the software versions that are compatible with the product. So always order your parts based off of the product code. But of course, model numbers are very useful for service bulletins and service manuals. And of course, the serial number is needed to submit warranty claims. Moving into installation, we will touch on this for a few minutes because installation seems to be the #1 issue that we run into in warranty dish drawers. So there are 3 main key installation points to keep in mind, and almost all of them relate to the drain of the dishwasher. So we really want to make sure that as the product is installed, of course, you may or may not have control over that as a service technician, but as the product is installed, the installer should have pulled all of the excess drain hose through to the under sink area. And then we should have our drain support, whether that is the high loop bracket or an air gap. That drain hose support should be at least 29.5 inches from the floor. And lastly, after it goes over the high loop bracket, we don't want any sag or excess drain hose. If there is residual drain hose, obviously that's an area where water can be trapped, so you can get odors or poor draining issues, poor wash performance, all the common complaints that we see on dish drawers. So with an air gap, it essentially is no different. As the product is pushed into place in the alcove, we need all the excess hose pulled through to the under sink area, that it enters through the base of the under sink cabinet, not through the sidewall. So we want to prevent any sort of pinching and kinking of the drain hoses. So as they come through the floor, straight up to the air gap, and the drain hoses are trimmed to length as needed. So again, no excess, no sag. We don't need to coil them or anything like that. So if you have a spider web or a nest of drain hoses, just know that that certainly is a contributing factor, if not the root cause of most issues we see in warranty on dish drawers. Pretty standard in terms of the opening dimensions, power requirements, and the water requirements. As you can see here, incoming temperature, a minimum of 120 up to a maximum of 140. The heater plate within the dish drawer will take over from there. Very low water usage, 3.6 gallons per load, and that is on a normal cycle. Of course, there are wash cycles as well as wash modifiers that can increase or decrease the water consumption if that is a cause for concern. But moving into the product itself, we're going to look at the front components. So on the front of the dish drawer, if we open it up, we will find 2 pins on the side of the door panel. Those pins just push straight in and they are removed by pulling straight out with a pair of pliers. The panel will drop down. As soon as the panel is out of the way, we now have access to all of the components on the front of the product, which starts with our display, which will be attached to the panel. Now, if we do have a designer or a pro model, you will have a designer display, which is our start pause button. And then we will have our separate interface. The designer, the pro, and the integrated models all have a capacitive touch user interface that is on the very front of the tub flange. If you're familiar with older older Fisher and Paykel dish drawers, then you know, or you are familiar with the user interface on that upper flange in the front. Now, one key difference on the integrated products is the actual start pause button. You would start the dish drawer from inside the tub flange and close the drawer. But if we are fully integrated, we don't have any buttons or any more interface on the front of the product to pause the unit in case you had to add a dish or maybe you needed something that was inside. So what we developed is a knock to pause sensor. It's basically a small accelerometer that just senses vibration within the panel. So it is very critical that the knock sensor is rigidly mounted with all 3 screws to the front panel. And of course, that is the installer's responsibility, but just know that if a customer is on an integrated model and they do have concerns that the knock sensor is not working properly or they cannot pause the drawer, that would be a good thing to check, is to ensure that that knock sensor is properly mounted to the front panel. Beyond the interface and displays, we now get into some of the software of the product. Our wash controller at the front, this controls all major wash functions and is essentially the logic to the machine. It controls the wash profile, what actions are going to take place when, the timing of the entire cycle. So you can think of this wash controller as the brains of the system. So this is really going to make all the decisions on what the product is going to do. It does also contain the optics. So the sender and the receiver optic send out, obviously, a light signal that is transferred through small light pipes and reflected back through a prism in the chassis. That is the Fisher and Paykel system on how to recognize door closure. So just know that it also controls the optics within the machine. Beyond that, we have our drying fan. It is a small 24-volt DC drying fan that circulates air after the cycle has completed to aid drying performance. And then we have our flow-through dispenser. The flow-through dispenser, you may find 1 or 2 solenoids. If you have 2 solenoids, one of them is going to be for the rinse aid. The other is going to be a detergent diverter, and that will direct the incoming water through the pre-wash cup or the main wash cup. All right, moving into the inside of the drawer itself. Pretty straightforward. We have our racks and our silverware basket that just lifts straight out. Same with the spray arm, just lifts straight off of the rotor. And then we get into our strainer and filter plate. The strainer and filter plate are held in place with a twist lock, about 1/8 of a turn counterclockwise, and those 2 components come out of place. The same is true of the rotor itself. Now that rotor is the heart of the machine. It's what pumps the water up through the spray arm to produce the wash, and when prompted, it will reverse direction to drain the unit. And then taking a look a little deeper into the tub itself is our water duct down below. The water duct itself, there's no serviceable parts underneath the water duct. The only real reason to ever uninstall or reinstall a water duct would be for broken glass, or if you're installing a new tub entirely and you have to transfer the components over to the new tub. All right, so looking to the bottom of the tub, imagine we have rotated this tub counterclockwise. As with any Fisher and Paykel dish drawer, when you have to service the underside components on the bottom of the tub, you always want to make sure you're rotating the tub counterclockwise, perform your service, and when service is complete, rotate the tub clockwise to ensure that none of your lines pinch or twist or kink. Otherwise, you will encounter struggles with door closure. So always make sure counterclockwise, perform the repair, rotate it clockwise when you're done. Removing the wiring cover on the bottom is held on with a few clips. We've got 5 clips and 2 screws that are holding it together. Once you've removed that wiring cover, now we have access to the few components on the bottom side of the tub. We have our heater plate, which is held in place with its own mounting bracket and screws. The stator itself, which is again held in with its own mounting bracket and screws. And then our temp sensor, which is held in with just a press fit grommet. And the last thing I will mention there is we now have separated the stator from the heater plate, which makes it much more serviceable. It's a lot easier from a technician standpoint to diagnose and replace or repair the components that may or may not have failed. So it's a lot nicer of a design compared to what we had, where the stator and heater plate used to interlock. They're now separate and they are independently replaceable from one another. Taking a look inside of the chassis, if we needed to get to this point of service, we would remove both tubs from the rail, set them off to the side. There's no need to detach any of the fill line, the drain line, the power cord, or anything like that. We can just remove the tub from the rails and scoot that off to the side. And we are left with our lids. So each drawer, obviously, upper and lower, has its own lid system. And the lids are removed by this procedure here. So on each of the 4 corners around the lid, you'll find a slot where a flathead screwdriver will fit perfectly. If we put a flathead screwdriver in there, press it against the chassis, that will disengage the clips and locks, and then we can pull down on our lid to get them free of the lid yoke. So we would want to repeat that procedure on all 4 corners. And we may have to press on the lid yoke to get a little more flex and movement. That way the lid can be removed entirely. Beyond that, once we have the lids out of place, we can now remove the yokes from the chassis. The lid yokes are simply clipped onto the lid motors or lid actuators. The lid actuators, again, everything's clips. They are clipped onto the actual rails of the product. So if you ever have to replace your lid actuators, they come in a pack of 2. They are the same left versus right. You just swap the orientation of the motor and re-engage them to the rail itself. We have our link support as well. That bend or kink in the link support is meant to be there. That is not a mistake. That link support, the primary job of the link support is to retain the drain line, fill line, and power supply while the drawer is opened and closed. We want to make sure that it is not binding or kinking as we open and close the drawer. So a link support has been added to ensure that the drawer opens and closes properly. And then taking a look down on the lower left-hand corner, we have our fill valve. So again, if it is a single product, it's going to be a single solenoid. If it's a double dish drawer, you're going to have 2 solenoids, still 1 incoming water supply. And that is found underneath that chassis or module cover. This is a little different if you're familiar with the Fisher & Paykel dish drawers. The chassis module cover used to be held in place with 1 clip, and it would slide to the right to disengage. This new chassis module cover is held in with 2 clips, and it slides forward to disengage. So we'll see that here. Just using a flathead screwdriver. Depress the 2 locking clips and slide the module cover forward. And you now have access to the terminal block, your water valve, and the one screw that retains our motor controller. So the motor controller, it is essentially a relay board. The motor controller you can think of as the bronze. If the wash controller was the brains of the operation, the motor controller is the muscle. It's what carries out all the actual functions to the product. It controls the power to the heater plate, to the lid motors, to the fill valve, to the stator. But again, the wash controller is what controls the timing of all of those separate functions. On the back wall, you'll also find a pouch in case you forget everything I say today. On the back wall, you'll find a pouch with the service summary. It does contain wiring diagram, error codes, and some limited service information. So just know that there is always some additional resource in the product itself. And then moving into diagnostics. Diagnostics, we actually have a pretty robust diagnostic and hardware output system on the product. We can test components individually or really dive into error codes, which this machine has the ability to store up to 2 error codes. So activating diagnostics on the classic display, we want to make sure that the product has power, that it is plugged in, but that the display is off. So once we're at that point, we want to press and hold the start pause button and the power button, so the outer 2 buttons, for 5 seconds. Once we've done that, we will have DP shown on the display. That is our display mode. That'll test all the LEDs and the whole button array on the front of the interface there to ensure that the error code you're receiving is actually a 3 and not an 8. Pressing the start pause button will enter into this illumination or LED test mode. If we press it one more time, the start pause button, that is, if we press that one more time, we will get our current fault code. You can see on the screen here, we have a number of A faults, and those are typically customer alerts or user alerts, something that may be customer correctable. So as you can see, water supply issues, tub not draining, spray arm issues, and the ability to recover. And then we have our detrimental fault codes. Those are going to be more of the service fault codes that require a technician to attend. So F1, F2, F3, all of those F fault codes follow a similar formula to what we've used in years past on dish drawers. So if you're familiar with older dish drawers, you should be fairly familiar with the new error code system we have as well. Just know that there is now a second digit, which is going to reference a sub fault code for you. So for instance, F2 can now be defined as F21, 22, 23, 24, so on and so forth. It just gives you a little bit more diagnostic information to help when you're out there in the field. So again, I had mentioned it will store up to 2 fault codes. So right now we're at our current fault code. If we were to press the start pause button one more time, we can get our previous fault. And we'll know that's our previous fault because the delay time icon will be illuminated there on the display. Now, clearing the fault codes is pretty straightforward as well. We want to press and hold the wash selector, which is those double arrows. Press and hold the wash selector, and that will move our current fault to the previous position. The previous fault will be erased entirely. And if we do it a second time, again, that will move what was the current fault to the previous fault. It will delete that previous fault entirely. So now we have a blank slate where both error code slots are open in the control. This is a good habit to get into after you've completed service on a dish drawer. That way, if there is another issue down the road, you're not coming back and reading a much older error code. So hardware output is activated in a similar way. Hardware output, we do have to get into diagnostics. So again, we have power to the product. It is turned off on the display. We want to press and hold those outer two buttons, the start, pause, and power button, for about 5 seconds. That's when we will get DP, our display mode, on, but we want to use the wash selector one time to advance to the next menu, which is HO. That is our hardware output. We'll enter our hardware output mode by pressing the start pause button. Once we've entered hardware output, we will have ER on the display. That is the first of many components that we can test independently through hardware output. ER is for the element relay. So that is our heater plate, essentially. So we're going to use the wash selector, the double arrows, to scroll through the different components that we have, and we will use the start pause button to energize each component that we would like. So as you can see on this chart here, these are all of the components that we have available to test. So the heating element, we can test our lid motors, detergent diverter, our fill valve, the drain pump, the wash motor, the drying fan, all the LEDs. So a number of components inside can be tested manually, which is very, very nice for confirming an accurate diagnosis. Sorry, we're going to watch a quick video now. It's about 3 minutes. It's going to go through the diagnostic, activation, fault code storing, display mode, hardware output, and basically everything we just covered, but you're going to be able to see it in real time.
With the dish drawer turned off, press and hold the start pause and the power button for 5 seconds or until DP appears in the display. This is the first of 6 sub-menus. You can also select which drawer you wish to work on at this point by pressing the Tub Select button. Press the Start Pause button to enter a submenu. On DP, all the lights will light up. Press the Start Pause again to display the most recent fault and in which drawer it occurred. Pressing Start Pause again will display the previous fault as noted by the clock symbol. Press Start Pause again to return to the current fault. To remove the current fault, while it is displayed, press and hold the Wash Select button until 0 appears. This moves the current fault to the previous position as seen here. Press and hold Wash Select again to completely erase the fault. Press and hold the Power button to exit this submenu. Press the Wash Select button to scroll to hardware output. Press Start Pause to enter it. Use the Wash Select button to scroll through the components and Start Pause to turn them on and off. An O indicates that the component is on, and the drawer that it's functioning will be illuminated in the display. Press Start Pause again to turn it off, as indicated by the dash. By pressing the Tub Select button, the same component can be energized on the other drawer. On the lower drawer, there may be a slight delay before the on symbol appears. Use the Wash Select button to scroll through the other components. There are 13 components that can be tested in this mode, depending on the model. Press and hold the Power button to exit hardware output. Press the Wash Select button twice to scroll to Fast Cycle. Again, press Start Pause to enter this mode, and Start Pause once more to start a fast cycle. Press Start Pause to pause the cycle, and press and hold the Power button to exit fast cycle and diagnostic mode. Press and hold the Power button to turn the dish drawer off. Enter diagnostics again with the Start, Pause, and Power buttons and use the Wash Select button to scroll to showroom mode. Press the Start Pause button to enter showroom mode. The display will begin to scroll through the various cycles. To exit showroom mode, first turn the dish drawer off by pressing and holding the Power button. Then press and hold the Start Pause and Power button. The disk drawer is now out of showroom mode. Press and hold the power button to turn the unit off.
Okay. So that is activation of diagnostics, hardware output, display mode, our fast test cycle, and showroom mode on the classic model that has the LCD interface on the front. We are going to take a little bit of a closer look at the integrated model. The integrated model, again, has the text on the front tub flange with our cycles and wash modifiers, as well as our start button. This is the same design that we use on our designer model, the pro model, as well as, again, here listed as integrated. Diagnostics obviously is activated a little bit differently since we don't have a full LCD display. So what we have to rely on are the LEDs. So we do have to read the sequence of LEDs, and that will indicate a binary code that translates to a fault code. It's much easier if you have the service manual right there with you, so you can decipher those fault codes in real time. But we'll see hardware output through this different style of interface here, but very, very similar. The key presses are the same. So what we want to do is press and hold our outer two buttons. That's going to be the cycle selector and our start button. Once we've done that, we will be in display mode with our extra dry and quick LED flashing. If we press the wash selector one time, then we're going to have heavy, extra dry, and sanitize illuminated, and that will indicate hardware output. Now, if we wanted to enter hardware output mode, we would press the start button one time, and then we can run through the series of components available for test. So it is done similarly here. So press and hold the outer two buttons. That's going to be our advance or our cycle selector, as well as our start pause button there on the right. The extra dry and quick LEDs will turn on. If we press the start button, that'll enter us into display mode where we can have all the LEDs illuminated. If we press it one more time, then this is where we'll have our current fault code displayed. You can see the different values in binary, where rinse has a value of 1, delicate has a value of 2, fast, eco, medium, so on and so forth. What we would want to do if it was a fault code is we would total up the LEDs that are illuminated, and that would indicate our fault code. So if delicate and rinse, if those two LEDs were illuminated, that would be a fault 3 error. Now, if we do have an A fault, a user error, or a user education, a user fault, those are defined as those A faults. And you will have the wash modifiers will blink at you. If it is an F fault, a detrimental fault code, something that requires a technician to attend and repair, we will know that is an F fault because the lock LED will be illuminated at that time. So again, the ability to store 2 fault codes. So if we needed that second fault code, we would press the start button one more time. Of course, record any of those fault codes. And then if we needed to clear them out of the control, we want to press and hold the advance key or our cycle selector to move the current fault to the previous position. The previous fault will be erased entirely. And if we do it one more time, that will erase the current fault entirely. So taking a look at hardware output, that next diagnostic menu that we have available, display, fault codes, and then hardware output. So taking a look at hardware output, again, these are the components, the same components that we can test with the classic display is what we can test in the integrated designer or pro models. It just takes a little bit more of your deciphering while you're on site to indicate which LEDs are illuminated and which component you're actually energizing at that given time. So sorry, I will preface that by saying we do have another video. This one's a little bit longer. It's about 4 minutes, but it's going to show the same procedure just on the integrated display instead of the classic display. So you get to see some of the differences there, but just know we don't actually have digits, letters, and digits to read for fault codes on integrated. We do have to decipher based on the LEDs that are illuminated. So we'll see that here.
This video covers the basic steps to entering and navigating through diagnostics on the Fisher & Paykel Phase 9 Integrated and Designer dish drawers. Please refer to the service manual for more information. With the dish drawer plugged in, but all of the lights off, press and hold the start and cycle buttons until extra dry and quick lights come on. This is the first of 4 different modes: display, hardware output, fast cycle, and continuous cycle. Press the start button to enter a mode. By entering the display mode, all the lights will light up. Press the start button again to find the current fault. There are 2 different types of faults: A faults and F faults. A faults are generally user faults. F faults are related to the product itself. A faults are identified by 3 blinking lights: extra dry, quick, and sanitize. F faults are identified by the same 3 lights blinking, plus the red light above the lock icon. When a fault is present, the code can be read in the 7 cycle lights counting from right to left. The rinse light has the value of 1, the delicate light represents 2, and so on as you move to the left. Add up the illuminated lights to find the fault. There are 5 A faults and 18 F faults possible. So in this case, we have an A1 fault code, a water supply fault. To erase a fault, press the cycle button once. This will move the fault to the previous fault position as indicated by the delay time icon when play is pressed again. Press the cycle button again to completely erase the fault. Now it is gone from both locations. Press and hold the start button to exit the display mode. Now press the cycle button to move to the hardware output mode, as indicated by the extra dry and sanitize lights. Press the start button to enter this mode. The first component is the element relay as indicated by the heavy light. Press the start button to energize each component. A red light next to the cycle button will indicate when a component is on. The element relay will automatically turn off after 5 seconds. Press the cycle button to advance to the lid motors as indicated by the medium light. The start button turns the component on and off. Press the cycle button again to advance to the detergent diverter as indicated by the eco light. Press the cycle button again to advance to the fill valve as indicated by the fast light. Press the cycle button again to advance to the motor in wash mode as indicated by the delicate light. This mode is not testable on the integrated unit. Press the cycle button again to advance to the motor in drain mode as indicated by the rinse light. Press the cycle button again to advance to the rinse aid pump as indicated by the heavy and medium lights. Press the cycle button again to advance to the fan as indicated by the heavy and eco lights. Press the cycle button again to advance to the rinse aid LED as indicated by the heavy and fast lights. The LED can be seen through the rinse aid cap. Press the cycle button again to advance to the water softener diverter as indicated by the heavy and delicate lights. This will only work on water softener models. Press cycle again for the water softener brine pump as indicated by the heavy and rinse lights. Press cycle again for the water softener brine valve as indicated by heavy, medium, and eco lights. This will only work on water softener models. Press cycle again for the rinse aid solenoid as a valve as indicated by the heavy, medium, and fast lights. Press cycle again for the temperature being read at the temp sensor in degrees Celsius. Add up the value of the illuminated lights for the current temperature. In this example, we have 1, 4, and 16, so 21 degrees Celsius. Press cycle again, and you're back at the beginning of the component list. Press and hold play to exit the hardware output mode. Press the cycle button to advance to the fast cycle mode as indicated by all 3 wash modifier lights. Press play and close the drawer within 4 seconds to start the cycle. At any point, you can exit diagnostics by pressing and holding the play button.
So as we can see, it's a little more involved on the designer, pro, or integrated models, but still very similar sequence to the classic display that has the LCD output. Apologies. So moving forward, for any of you in the audience that are authorized service providers, you do have access to our internal website, Cool Blue World. This is the primary interface or resource for authorized servicers for submitting warranty claims, as well as the location of all of the service manuals, parts breakdowns, service bulletins. We do have a nice contact us feature as well that is a direct link to our technical support department. So a very, very valuable resource. So for anybody who is in the audience that is not authorized, that is interested in becoming authorized, that will unlock a whole lot more resources for you in the field. But in case you're familiar with this or may not be familiar with this, we do have a quick search on Cool Blue World where we can have a few different drop-down menus of our different file types. In this instance, we're looking at bulletins. But this is also where we would go to look for parts breakdowns, service manuals, wiring diagrams, and other service information like that. So selecting the file type we're interested in, the brand we're working on, the category of product that we're working on, and a partial model number, we end up with a result table looking like this. So these are some of the current faults facing the Phase 9 disk drawer. Primarily, the A7 auto recovery is more of just an information on what that code means and what can be done to correct the issue. Very early generations did have a wash performance upgrade kit, but that was 2017, 2018 models. So you're not seeing many of those in the field now that require this upgrade kit. And then a few different designs to specifications on plate height and service version changes because of a stainless steel supply chain change, different things like that. So a lot of good information on Cool Blue World. But in looking at warranty data, we've done a little bit of research here to find out what the top 5 or most common issues on disk drawer are. The number one issue seems to be programming. So the knock sensor on integrated models does actually have 5 levels of sensitivity. It comes set from the factory to level 4, but it can be increased or decreased as needed. There is a procedure for that. So that is customer education. That procedure is outlined in the quick start guide as well as the user guide located on our customer website, fisherpaykel.com. The second most common programming issue we get called into our technical support is how to access diagnostic mode. So those are the 2 videos that we watched together today, showing how to access diagnostic mode and navigate through those menus. The second most common issue that we run into with disk drawer is draining. So poor draining, poor drying, all of those kind of translate into what we've seen as poor installation. When these products return to the warehouse because they've been escalated to the point of exchange due to not draining issues, we find more often than not it is related to installation faults. So the product may not be level. It may have been how they were routing the drain hoses, the high loop or the air gap may or may not have been installed properly. Or the drain hoses were just never trimmed to length based on the installation that the product was in. We've also seen on occasion some rotor faults. The component itself, whether it is hair or debris, some sort of foreign material getting in and jamming the rotor. We've seen a few of those. The three most common fault codes we've seen is F24. Again, that translate or that's associated with the rotor itself. We could have a jamming issue. Maybe there is a rubber band or a food tie. Again, all sorts of debris or things that can get past the strainer and filter plate to jam the rotor, or it could be a fault of the rotor itself. We've seen this especially in products that are not used very frequently. So maybe a vacation home or an RV, a houseboat. These products do use water as a lubricant in the sump of the motor. So if, again, a vacation home, if it's not being occupied for more than 6 or 7 months out of the year, you can imagine that a cup of water is going to evaporate during that time period, and we're going to have a dry rotor. So starting the dishwasher up, we're running it dry, that can cause damage to the rotor. So we have seen that be the case. And then a couple of different user faults, A3 or A6, again, related to possibly installation. Maybe the spray arm is out of place or the rotor is not locked in to the wash plate properly. The nice thing about double dish drawers, for the technicians on the call, you can, if it is a double model, you can essentially think of it as two independent dishwashers. And so you almost always have two sets of parts. So if you suspect that you maybe have a bad spray arm or a bad rotor, or maybe that the wash basket or something like that is causing interference, you can always swap components from the upper to the lower drawer or vice versa and see if the problem follows to that other drawer. If it does follow, then you know you've found the source of the issue. And if it doesn't, if the drawer still responds the same way, then we know we've got a little more diagnosing to do. The fourth most common issue we see on these phase 9 dish drawers is dead unit, no power supply. So this is a case where we get no lights, no display, nothing at all. We do have 120 volts at our outlet. We're getting 120 volts into the motor control, but no output from there. That is a good sign that the motor control itself has a fault. And from what we've seen, we've sent a number of these parts back to the factory for analysis after they failed in the field. And more often than not, we've found that what is considered dirty power has caused the issue, whether it's, again, houseboats, RVs that are running off of a generator system, or some homes that are in remote areas that are relying on solar power or other things like that. If we don't have that consistent 120 volts at 60 hertz on a 15 amp circuit with nice, clean, steady power and no spikes or crazy fluctuations, then generally you won't have this. But more often than not, when you have rolling blackouts or, again, a dirty power supply, then that certainly can affect the motor control board. And the last thing is noises. Of course, a new machine, oftentimes in the field, we get complaints of noises. So some of the noises that you may encounter on the dish drawer are normal, and some may not be. We may have a failed component, like a bad drying fan or a rotor that has a worn or dried out bearing. Or it could just be normal noises. Again, if it's doing it on both drawers, then chances are it is normal. If it is only one drawer that is abnormally loud, can we swap components from top to bottom? And if the noise complaint follows the component, then we know we found our source of the issue. So those are the most common issues that we see in the field. But moving on, this is a quick look at the United States, the coverage area that we have for the US, as well as all of our service managers that are helping to keep things under control. So if you are interested in becoming one of our authorized service centers, definitely whichever state you're in, if you'd like, you can record the name of the service manager or throw out the interest in the chat here, and I will definitely pass on the information to the appropriate service manager. So we do have competitive rates, increased parts discounts. We do have very responsive and dedicated service managers, an amazing team over here that really manages customer experience for Fisher & Paykel. Of course, you get to, as if you were on the call yesterday with during the Fisher & Paykel session, during that roundtable, today's warranty customer is tomorrow's COD customer. And that is a pretty nice thing to look forward to with Fisher & Paykel customers. You get to look forward to that premium luxury COD call in the future. And then, of course, we do have advancement opportunities for your company within ours to segment yourself or separate yourself as a premium servicer for us, or a preferred service provider. So again, if you are interested in becoming an authorized service provider for Fisher & Paykel, please reach out in the comments or our 800 number through customer care. But yeah, we would love to have you. So at this point, that concludes our presentation for today on the Fisher & Paykel dish drawer. Are there any questions or comments out there? No? Okay. Jenny or Carmine, you out there?
Oh, Carmine, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It was a great presentation. I really appreciate it. I just wanted everybody to know that tomorrow Fisher Paykel is going to go ahead and do a training on delivery and install, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, being that he pointed out delivery issues can be our #1 problem, which we do know about in service. I would strongly recommend going to that session to learn more about the product itself. Also, don't forget, today we have our continuation of our trade show booths, and that'll be from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You just scroll down into your registration, and then you can pick the trade show booth that you would like to go in and visit. Otherwise, there's nothing more that I could think of.
That's perfect. Thank you, Carmine.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it for me. If there's no other questions or comments on the product, then I will let you get back to the rest of the day's events.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Awesome. Thank you all.